Hello everyone. We continue our discussion of 2D transformations today. And last time we had seen that we cannot represent translations as 2 cross 2 matrix transformations, right? So translations on the 2D plane essentially cause shifts of this sort. They are not representable as 2 cross 2 matrix transformations, right? And we saw that we could represent reflections like this, we could represent scalings and shears like this, but we could not do it for a translation. The only way we could apply a translation was by adding a vector offset as is shown on this slide. And then we tried to figure out what is the reason for this. And we studied linear maps. We said that a mapping from one vector space to another vector space was considered linear if it followed these properties. And then I had asked you to prove that these particular transformations are all linear. They are all representable as 2 cross 2 matrices, whereas 2D translation is not a linear transformation. Okay, and this would seem to suggest that you cannot represent this as a 2 cross 2 matrix. Okay, and you cannot apply the translation transformation as a product between a 2 cross 2 matrix and a 2 vector. Okay, but we want to apply translations as matrices to vectors because then that gives us a very nice formulation of handling all transformation applications in a similar unified sort of a way. And therefore we look at homogeneous coordinates. Okay, so homogeneous coordinates allow us to represent the points in Euclidean coordinates, which are px and py, as homogeneous points, and to write px, py, or the point p as a homogeneous point ph, we just append this extra coordinate. That is what we call the homogeneous coordinate, right? So this is the homogeneous coordinate, and we are going to represent this by w in this set of slides. So if we add the homogeneous coordinate to a Euclidean tuple, then we get the corresponding homogeneous point, right? How do we map back? Given a homogeneous point, how do we map back to a Euclidean point? Well, a homogeneous point in general might be given to us as some wpx, wpy, w. To get back the Euclidean points from that, we just divide the px, py, wpx, wpy, w by the homogeneous or the third coordinate, which is the w, and we get back px, py 1, and then we just drop the 1 to get back the non-homogeneous coordinates. Okay, now so this is a special sort of a mapping from our normal 2D Euclidean coordinate system to a 3D homogeneous coordinate system. Okay, and we will see that this will enable us to handle translations as matrices. Okay, it is sort of an upgrade to our Euclidean coordinate system. What this also does is that for any given Euclidean point, it gives us multiple homogeneous points. So a Euclidean point 3, 2 can be represented as homogeneous point 3, 2, 1, or homogeneous point 12, 8, 4, or homogeneous point 6, 4, 2, because by this mapping from homogeneous to Euclidean, it should be clear is that if I divide by the last coordinate, I will get back the same non-homogeneous or Euclidean point. Okay, so just a short note on nomenclatures. we represent, we have been talking about Euclidean coordinates, which are our normal 2D non-homogeneous coordinates, right? These are represented as a tuple xy, or as we have been writing them as a column vector xy. Okay, we represent the set of these coordinates as R2, right? And the corresponding homogeneous coordinates are no longer 2D, they are 3D, and they are also known as 3D projective coordinates. Okay, so this is another name for 3D homogeneous coordinates, and from the word projective comes this representation for the set of homogeneous coordinates, which is P3. Okay, so for us that means that the homogeneous coordinate is going to look like that. Okay, so corresponding to this, the Euclidean counterpart is that. Okay, so can we have some interpretation of what are these homogeneous coordinates? So let us try and look at that. Can we get a geometric interpretation of homogeneous coordinates? So given a point, given a homogeneous point xyw, right, xyw transpose, because we have been representing them as column vectors. If I plot the point in the xy, I'm sorry, this should have been xyw coordinate system, right, because we are calling the third coordinate axis as w. Then the line joining the point with the origin. Okay, so suppose this is your point PH, and this here is your origin. You join the origin with this point, then this point is going to intersect the W is equal to 1 plane, okay, at a point that is x by W, y by W 1, okay, and if I just drop the 1, then I get the projection of this point on my 2D plane, and this point here is x by W, y by W. Okay, so we have x by W, y by W on the 2D xy plane. We have x by W, y by W, comma 1 on the W is equal to 1 plane, and we have the point x by W on this ray that joins the origin with x by W, y by W 1, right? So all the points on this ray, you can now see all the points on this ray, they are going to map to x by W, y by W, comma 1, and then they are going to map to the same 2D Euclidean point. Okay, so a point in R2 therefore is equivalent to a ray in P3. Okay, so that is why you have multiple points that map to the same point when we go from homogeneous coordinates to Euclidean coordinates. Okay, so as it says here, all points on the line will map to the same point on the W is equal to 1 plane, and consequently to the same point on the Euclidean in our Euclidean R2 plane. Okay, so this is the geometric interpretation of homogeneous coordinates. Okay, so you can have any value here, and you just divide by that, and you land up with the corresponding Euclidean point. Okay, now I want to leave you with a thought, actually two thoughts. So the first one is that what happens if so I said that if you have x, y, w, then you divide by w to get that. Okay, now what happens if w is 0? Okay, So what happens? W is 0 because then you can't really divide by W, but you have x by W. Is that a valid point in the homogeneous coordinate system? And if it is, then what does it represent? Okay, does it have a geometric interpretation? Does it have a counterpart in the Euclidean coordinate system? Okay, so this is one thing that I want you to think about. The second thing I want you to think about is that where have you seen this geometry before, right? So this geometry here, where you have a point and you have a ray joining that point with the origin, and you take the intersection of this ray with a plane, and you get this other point. Okay. So where have you seen such a geometry before in all that you have seen in computer graphics so far? Okay. And the moment you realize this fact, you will figure out another use for homogeneous coordinates. Okay. And we will come back to this use later. But think about these two things, okay, 1 and 2, and try and see what you can come up with. Okay. So continuing, once you have homogeneous coordinates, now your 2D transformation matrix becomes 3 cross 3. The earlier 2 cross 2 matrix shows up in the top left, and the translation parameters now show up here in the last column. Okay, and the last row of this transformation is 0, 0, 1 for now. Okay, how do we apply this transformation? Well, we take the homogeneous form of any given Euclidean point. So if we are given a point xy, we take the homogeneous form of that, which becomes xy1. We apply this transformation, do a usual matrix vector product, and you will find that x prime, right? You will find that x prime will be a times x plus c times y plus L. Okay, so you can see that this here is adding up to the x coordinates, right? And similarly, this quantity here will add up to the y coordinates. So they are the translations that show up in the 3 cross 3 matrix, and W just stays 1 because we have put the last row as 1. So after you have computed x prime, y prime, W, you can just drop W because W is 1, and that gives you back the 2D homogeneous point, the 2D non-homogeneous point, okay, or the 2D Euclidean point. So by doing this, therefore, we have a nice way of representing translations as matrices. We can apply them by doing matrix vector products. And now these transformations are no longer linear, but they have another name. They are called affine transformations. Okay. So this is what I said, that for translating a point, we see that you can just use these parameters here, right? So if I keep this part of the transformation as an identity transformation, then we can see that this becomes a pure translation. Okay, so only translation is applying. There is nothing else here. However, if you want to factor in scaling, rotation, and shear, then that continues to work with this top left 2 cross 2. Okay, so that part really does not change. Fine. So this gives us a very nice way of representing all our transformations as matrices, just by upgrading from 2D Euclidean to 3D homogeneous. So now we can talk about applying multiple transformations one after the other. So what happens if I apply one translation followed by another translation? So I have a point xy1 to which I apply one translation transformation, and that gives me p prime. and then to P prime I apply another translation transformation, right? So the first translation offsets are L1 M1, the second translation offsets are L2 M2. Then in the resulting point, I see that the translation that applies is L1 plus L2 and M1 plus M2. Okay, so successive translations, if you concatenate two translations one after the other, then the translations add up. Okay, we can do the same experiment with scalings, right? If you apply two scalings one after the other, then you will find that the scaling parameters, okay, so the diagonal elements are the scaling parameters, remember, then the scaling parameters will get multiplied. So successive scalings therefore are multiplicative. Okay. What happens in the case of rotations? Well, you can take two rotations, one by theta and one by phi, about the same pivot point. So the pivot point is the origin in this case. Okay. So you first apply r theta to P and you get P prime. Then you apply r phi to P prime. And if you will actually do the products of these matrices, you will find that the resulting matrix that applies actually has theta plus phi. So successive rotations about the same pivot are also additive. Okay, so this is very interesting, right? Now you can also think about what happens if you apply say r theta first and then r phi, or you apply r phi first and then r theta, right? So since the result is additive, it does not matter whether you have phi plus theta or theta plus phi. Similarly, for scalings, it will not matter whether you have Sx1 into Sx2 or Sx2 into Sx1. The result is going to be the same. However, in general, transformation products are not commutative. So AB is not equal to BA for transformation products, right? And we will re-establish point in a moment. So, but for now, because of the reason that you can concatenate transformation, that means you can apply one transformation after another transformation after another transformation, you can do things like the following, right? You can perform a rotation about an arbitrary point A, right? So far we have only seen rotations about the origin, but what if I want a different pivot that is not the origin? So let us say I have this shape which is a rectangle, and the pivot I want is a corner of this rectangle, which is given by A. So how do I apply a rotation about this? Well, the only rotation I know how to apply is a rotation about the origin. So I first translate from A to O, and I apply that translation to the entire shape so that A comes to O. Then I rotate about O, and then I translate back to A. Okay. So what do? I first translate this shape so that A comes to O. Let us say that is this translation by L1 M1. Then I rotate about the origin. This matrix I already know. Then I translate back. Okay. So what is the total transformation that applies? That gives me this final rotated shape. Well, that is going to be the product of these three transformations. And this small example should be enough to make you realize that the order of transformation matters a lot. Okay, so first we did a translation, then we did a rotation, then we did an inverse of the first translation. Okay, if you had messed up the ordering, say you did translation, so if this is T1, this is R, and this is T1 inverse. If instead of this you did T1 inverse T1 R, you will get a completely different thing. Or if I did R T1 inverse T1, I will get a completely different thing. Okay, so the ordering of transformations matters a lot. Okay, and also remember that the vertex that this is going to go and apply to is going to appear here. Okay, so first this matrix is going to get applied, then this is going to get applied, then that is going to get applied. So transformations in our convention, we had set up this convention right at the beginning of our study of transformations. We had said that our points are going to be represented as column vectors and the transformations are going to be applied by pre-multiplying matrices to column vectors. Okay, so always remember these points. Here is another complex example. You want to reflect about an arbitrary line. Okay, we know how to reflect about the coordinate axis. We can form those reflection matrices directly. How do I reflect about an arbitrary line? Well, the answer should be obvious. You make this line merge with one of the coordinate axis, then you reflect, and then you take the line back to its original orientation and position. Okay, so how do we do that? You first pick a point on the line and apply a translation so that that point comes to the origin. Then you rotate the line about the origin so that the line matches one of the coordinate axes. Then you reflect about that coordinate axis. Okay. Now inverse rotate the line and inverse translate the line. This gives you reflection about an arbitrary line. Okay. Remember, you have to apply these transformations in this particular order. Okay, so order is very important when you are applying transformations. And this is a general point that I was making earlier, that you must remember that in general, transformation composition is not commutative. So when you have two translations one after the other, or two rotations about the same pivot one after the other, or two scalings one after the other, then it does not matter what order you perform them in. However, when you are mixing transformations and you are multiplying, say, a translation with a rotation, then the order starts to matter. Because in general, for matrix products, T1 times T2 is not equal to T2 times T1. Okay, so you must absolutely remember this. Okay, now we have seen linear transformations and we have seen affine transformations. Those are the two broad kinds of transformations that we have seen. Okay, there is and we saw that linear transformations were these transformations like rotation, scalings, and shear and reflections, which could perform all sorts of operations but could not perform a shift. Okay, and they were linear because they satisfied a particular set of properties, whereas affine transforms did not satisfy that set of properties, but we had to upgrade to homogeneous coordinate system to get affine transforms, and then with affine transforms we could also do shifts. We could also do translations. Okay, you can also study transformations by trying to figure out what properties of a particular shape they are invariant, which are invariant to the transform. Invariant means those properties do not change when you apply a particular kind of transformation. For example, if you have what are known as rigid transformation, lengths and distances on the shape do not change. Angles inside the shape do not change. Okay, that means if I apply a rigid transform to a square, it is going to stay a square. That means the side, or if I apply a rigid transform to a unit square, it can only stay a unit square. That means the sides will stay of unit length, right? All the sides will stay of the same length, and the angles, which are right angles, will stay right angles. Okay, so if the sides were of unit length, then the sides stay of unit length, and the angles inside stay 90 degrees. Okay, so this is a rigid transformation. Which transformations that we have studied belong to the class of rigid transformations? Well, there are only two of them, rotations and translations. Every other transformation is either going to modify lengths or angles or both. Right? So this is rigid transformations, and rigid transformations, for rigid transformations, lengths and angles are both invariant. They don't change under rigid transformation. Right? Now, if you think about affine transformations instead, then in an affine transformation, angles can change because the moment you do a shear, angles change, right? And lengths can also change because you can do scaling. So, lengths can also change, right? So, is there any geometric property that is invariant under the affine transform? Well, as it happens, there is this property that is invariant under affine transform, and the property is that if two lines are parallel to each other, then after applying the affine transform, they will stay parallel. So the affine transform preserves parallelism. So using a affine transform, you can change a square at best to a parallelogram. Okay, you cannot do this change, for example. So you cannot change word drawings. I was trying to draw a square. Let's see. At best, you can, so assume that this is my square. You cannot convert a square to a trapezium, right? This is not possible using an affine transform. So all the transformations that we have seen so far are affine transforms, and we have not seen any transformation that will allow you to do this kind of change, which is something that we will see later when we come to viewing transform. Okay, so this is an interesting way of studying transformations by studying their invariants or properties that they do not change. In general, a 2D transformation can look like this with homogeneous coordinates, right? We will have ABCD, we have LM, and for affine transformations, we said that this last row was always 0, 0, 1. But for the general form, they need not be 0, 0, 1. They can be some PQS, and we will see what does this PQS represent in its most general form when we talk about viewing transformation. Okay, so that is when we will start using these elements. So that is all for 2D transformations, and in the next lecture we will start discussing 3D transformations. Thank you.